I'd like to change gears now and talk about how we came to be here today. Canadians' internet usage is nearly double the worldwide average, according to a ComScore white paper released just this past March. And did you know that Canadians watch more than twice as much online video as the average citizen in the world? L'Internet, qu'éprouve la population canadienne envers l'Internet, se manifeste par la croissance rapide du domaine .ca. La CII s'est chargée de l'administration du registre en 2000. Et maintenant, le .ca compte plus de 1,8 million de noms de domaines enregistrés, soit un taux de croissance au 4e rang parmi les plus importants domaines nationaux. Nous sommes une nation numérique. C'est là un fait réel. Despite this, Canadians have generally had limited exposure to how the internet is governed or administered. I think you got a bit of a picture of how the internet ecosystem works and is like from my conversation this morning with Bill and Bertrand. But as we said, it's really an entire ecosystem, which includes you folks in the room who are in charge or leading how the internet is operated. Unfortunately, there has not been a lot of opportunity for the average internet user in Canada to have their voices heard on the issues related to the internet. Although I'm sure Mr. Taves might say otherwise this week. But I would like to think of it this way. In a democracy, it's the voters who hold the power. And I know it might not always seem like that, but at the end of the day, that's how the system works. And with that power, however, comes the responsibility to keep informed about the issues. With those rights, there are responsibilities. And the responsibility to get engaged, and the responsibility to have your voice heard. The internet is very similar. We all have a responsibility to stay informed about the issues, to get engaged, and to have your voices heard, like you can here today. So CIRA has created the Canadian Internet Forum, or CIF, to provide a venue. And I think that the title is exactly what this is. We are able to provide the forum for all of the disparate groups involved in the internet to come together and to have a dialogue with Canadians about issues related to internet governance. It's the reason why we're here today. We were inspired by the Global Internet Governance Forum, or IGF, that has taken place since the year 2006. And the IGF, as you heard this morning, is a United Nations organized venue for discussing issues of internet governance. We also drew inspiration from several regional and national IGFs that have sprung up around the world in different environments, including in the United States, West Africa, France, the UK, and others among those. We've also been very much encouraged by Industry Canada to lead the way in putting together a Canadian Internet Forum. And it's certainly in line with our corporate objects, because we're a private, not-for-profit company, but our corporate objects to carry out and support other internet-related activities in Canada, activities other than simply running a registry and the underlying DNS infrastructure. So the Canadian Internet Forum certainly falls under the umbrella of those corporate objects and inside a program we call the Community Investment Program, or CIP. We have no shortage of acronyms in the internet world. As part of CIRA's stewardship of the .ca domain space, the CIP has been created specifically to develop and carry out some of those other internet-related activities, particularly those of which can advance the cause and benefit that the internet can bring to the social and economic landscape in Canada. We were fortunate to work with a couple of really good partners last year on what was the first ever Canadian Internet Forum. They were the International Institute for Sustainable Development and the Media Awareness Network. And you heard Jane on the first panel this morning, who is from the Media Awareness Network. Now, working with our partners, we held regional consultations with invited experts, industry experts, and interested parties across 6 communities in Canada, literally from coast to coast to coast, and facilitated also an online discussion forum about internet-related issues of interest to Canadians. The consultations wrapped up with a national event held here in Ottawa last February, not dissimilar, but somewhat smaller than this one. And a report on the entire process and the findings of the 2011 CIF was developed and is available on CIRA's public website. And I'd strongly encourage you to take a look at that, because a lot of interesting information came out of those discussions. We get a real sense of the temperature of Canadians' feelings about what's happening on the internet and the high runner issues. We also shared this report with our colleagues at Industry Canada, and in October 2011, I presented our findings in a couple of sessions at the Internet Governance Forum, the Global Internet Governance Forum in Kenya, which we spoke about a little earlier today. And in fact, the CIF was presented at the main plenary group, one of the main sessions at the Global Internet Forum, in a session called Interregional Dialogue, Cross-Regional Perspectives, but really it was about all of the different ways that, the internet communities in different countries are doing this type of thing. And I can tell you it was a packed room. It was a very, very full room. I also participated in a workshop at the same event called the Multi-Stakeholder Internet Public Policy Dialogue, Lessons Learned and Best Practice Examples of Local and Global Dialogue. It's might need a little bit of marketing there to tighten up that title a bit, but nonetheless, again, it was a really good exchange of internet community members around the world on how to get the feedback from the community to feed up into the policymaking environment. So again, our presentation was well received, and the methodology that we use here in Canada is somewhat different than is being used in other regions, but it was very, very well received and certainly being adopted by some other internet forums around the world. Like I said, the report is available online. We made it available to the international community, and it's also online at the global IGF's website. So, how did we get from there to here? As I said, there was express support for the Canadian Internet Forum and for CIRA to lead the process. However, participants from last year recommended that we invest in a more robust online consultation tool and move the focus of the consultations online, which within hindsight probably seems obvious given it's an internet consultation. And as a result, we did just that. The result was a very functional online tool, and I would encourage you to take a look at it. It's at cif.cira.ca. And the online consultation was also supported, enhanced by fairly significant social media activities. By moving the consultation online, we were able to fortunately engage a much broader cross-section of Canadians compared to doing simply the physical consultations. Furthermore, there's obviously a natural fit to hosting a dialogue about the internet on the internet. Our goal was to engage as many people as possible for this dialogue. After all, the internet at its core is a tool that facilitates communication. So let's use it for that purpose, which is what we're trying to do. To identify the topics for discussion as part of the 2012, or this Internet Forum, we commissioned research to conduct a national survey to get a sense of what really were the hot topics of the day. Numerous topics were identified, and I'll fill you in on some of those shortly. But back in November 2011, we actually launched the online discussion forum, and also in a few minutes I'll talk about what we found there. So, why are we here today, apart from some entertaining presentations? It's to present the findings of the survey and online consultations, and to discuss those findings with you and see if we got it right, see if we've taken the temperature correctly. And of course, to collect further input. This is a process, not a single destination point. And this will feed into our presentations this coming November 2012, at the next Global IGF in Azerbaijan. As I mentioned, we took a phased approach to the 2012 CIF, starting with the national survey, which in August, we worked with the public opinion survey company to deliver the survey to Canadians from August 29th to September 1st. We surveyed over 1,200 individuals and basically asked 4 open-ended questions. What do you think is the main challenge in general to the success of the internet in Canada today? What do you think is the main opportunity in general for the success of the internet in Canada today? And in your day-to-day use of the internet, what do you believe to be your greatest obstacle? What personal benefit do you believe the internet offers to you in your day-to-day use? So those are 4 broad, open-ended questions that allowed Canadians to really provide a wide range of feedback for us to assess. And this was a statistically significant survey, as they always say, plus minus 2.8% error rate, 19 times out of 20. So it is actually statistically relevant when we deliver these results. You know, sometimes a non-response tells as much or more than our response. And interestingly, when asked unprompted what the main challenge of the internet was in Canada, 40% of Canadians surveyed could not articulate a challenge, which personally I find amazing. I had a pretty long list myself, but 40% could not identify one thing. Furthermore, when asked unprompted what was the main opportunity for success of the internet in Canada, nearly half of all Canadians surveyed said they were unsure. They couldn't actually point to anything specific. And when asked about the greatest obstacle related to day-to-day usage of the internet, nearly 1/3 of Canadians could not identify an obstacle at all. So what does this tell us? I think it tells us a lot, actually. First of all, clearly the majority of Canadians do not put a lot of thought into how the internet is actually run. Like hydro or the telephone service, it's not something you think about until you lose access to it. I, for one, do not particularly find this surprising. You know, when you meet someone for the first time, and I mentioned this earlier, and you're getting acquainted and they ask me what I do more often than not, as I said earlier, the response is always, really? Somebody runs the internet? And without a doubt, the next one is, well, I thought the government did that. But the fact is, most people don't give much thought to how the internet is run, and honestly, shame on us on the inside for not communicating how important that is and how much input you can actually have. And so the CIF is one of the ways that CIRA is working to improve this situation. So let's talk about some of the responses that we did get. With the questions we asked, we were trying to get Canadians to identify and think about the opportunities and challenges the internet faces, both on a macro, nationwide level and on a personal, day-to-day usage level. On the first question, what do you think the main challenge in general to the success of the internet today is? Canadians' responses were pretty practical. 10% pointed to security as the internet's main challenge. We've heard about that today already. 10% stated accessibility, and 7% stated cost. So the things we've talked about today are actually borne out by the hard statistics when Canadians are surveyed. Other responses included privacy, speed, regulations, internet service providers and competition, viruses and spam, and parental controls. We also asked Canadians what the main opportunity for the success of the internet in Canada was. And for those that responded, about 10% stated the answer in terms of better access and cost. So that was the high runner there, better access and cost. Followed by access to a wealth of information, which was articulated by about 5% of the respondents. Improved communication and business and marketing opportunities were also articulated by about 5% as well. And finally, nearly 4% stated education as the main opportunity for the internet in Canada. We also wanted to gauge Canadians' thoughts on their personal usage. To that end, we asked Canadians to identify their greatest obstacles related to day-to-day usage of the internet. And the top unprompted obstacles were lack of digital literacy, and that was at 9%, followed by speed of the internet connection by nearly 7% of respondents. Again, messages we've heard this morning, both from the audience and from the panels. Prompted to provide what they believed were the personal benefits that the internet offers on a daily basis, nearly 1/3 of respondents identified access to information and knowledge. Nearly 17% identified communication, staying in touch with people, and 8% stated education and research. So you can see the high runner themes continuing to be pulled out. And I think it's important to note the fact that Canadians had a comparatively better idea of what to answer on this question, as only 14% of respondents did not identify a personal benefit of the internet. So, what did we do with the survey results? As I stated earlier, these results were collected to inform the online consultation, and after analyzing what we had learned, we were able to roll these findings into a set of broad topics to frame and inform the online discussions. And by the way, if you're interested in the full results of the survey, not just the highlights, please, like I said, go to our website. I'll plug it again, CIF.CIRA.ca, and there you can see all of the results from the survey. But in terms of challenges to the internet, we identified the following topics for discussion: security and safety, which includes topics such as stability and security of the internet, viruses, spam, cybercrime. Access and cost, topics there included were accessibility, higher speeds, reliable connections, and Canada's technical infrastructure. Digital literacy included topics such as privacy, parental controls, educating people how to use the internet, lack of digital literacy, and language barriers. And policy and governance, including topics such as content regulation, general regulation of the internet, and network neutrality came up there too. So in terms of opportunities for success of the internet, we identified the following topics for discussion: education, digital literacy, which includes the topics such as privacy, education, and research. And the digital economy topics were those such as business and marketing opportunities, jobs, online banking. Communications included topics such as improved communications and access to information and knowledge, global connections, and social media networking. And finally, technology and regulation included topics such as regulatory privacy and security concerns, and wireless technology progress. So on November 10th of this past year, 2011, we launched the online discussion forum at CIF.CIRA.ca. And the forum allowed users to comment on topics identified by CIRA, the ones just mentioned that were teased out of the research, what we call the official topics, as well as other user-generated topics. We let anybody create their own topics for discussion, and we call these the community-identified topics. So users could also rate topics, positive and negative, the old Facebook thumbs up, thumbs down. And we closed the comments recently, just on February 12th, after it had been open for 95 days. So people had a good chance to understand the issues and make their voices heard. So over that 3-month period, the online forum received more than 3,200 visits. And given that this is about internet governance, which can be a bit of an esoteric subject, we were extremely pleased with having that level of traffic. And interestingly, the average time on the site, and it depends if you come from the web world or not, if you do, this is actually a pretty good stat. The average visit was just shy of 3 minutes to the website. So while for many that may seem like a very short time, actually for a web visit, it was a pretty substantive amount of time on the site. 106 people registered to use the forum, so who could actually put discussion topics in. And there were 4 official topics, as I mentioned, and 13 identified by the community itself. Official topics were the busiest, which probably is no surprise because those were culled from the research itself. More than 70 comments on topics that included Canadian internet challenges, opportunities, security and safety, and also, interestingly, the internet as a human right. We were happy that forum users generated a whole host of their own topics, and were pleasantly surprised by the breadth and variety of the topics emerging. Many of the topics were very well thought through and both informed and informative. User-generated topics included literacy and what that actually means in a digital world, programming skills, making these ideas happen through political action, digitizing books, entertainment, freedom, upload speeds, certainly a popular one, how social media affects happiness, Plan B, a post about the possibility of a total failure of the internet, and what would that look like, internet crime, and Canadian sovereignty online, which I think was interesting, particularly in the light of the conversation we had with Bertrand earlier today. Also the platform for the Online Party of Canada and security and privacy continue to be high-runner topics that individual users brought up. There's a wide variety of topics and opinions, to be sure. In our analysis of the topics and comments for the forum, we found that what Canadians are really interested in talking about with regard to the internet can be summed up in what I think are these high-level catch-all descriptors. So, digital literacy, internet policy and research, the internet as a right, Canadian sovereignty online, access, speed, and cost, copyright, security, and the internet as a critical economic driver. Any surprises in there? There's probably a couple I didn't expect. I'd like to take a few minutes to delve into each of these topics a little bit deeper. And like I said, this is not just going to be me delivering the results. We are going to have an opportunity to have an ongoing conversation and a feedback loop. So I'll just put out some of what we heard through the research, and then we'll have an opportunity to have a dialogue within the room and with each other. So first was digital literacy. We heard Jane Talon from Media Awareness Network talk about how important digital literacy is for Canadians. And our research pardon me, reinforces how important it is. Users of the forum felt that access to the internet, though important, is only the start of developing Canada into a digital leader. The real challenge is getting Canadians to use the internet effectively, efficiently, safely, and securely. And digital literacy is going to be a critical factor in achieving this. There was also an interesting discussion about the definition of digital literacy. I mean, it's just 2 words side by side, yet they can have extremely different meanings to different people. And a number of the forum users stated the importance of actually coming up with a common definition for digital literacy, so that when we speak about it, we're actually all speaking about the same thing. Because some are talking about media literacy, some are talking about a need for technical skills, like how to update software and install antivirus applications, things that are required for staying safe online. But finally, digital literacy was generally was viewed as something that is learned throughout one's lifespan and not just in schools. We don't just teach it to our kids, it's a lifelong learning process. But how do we actually enact that and make that happen? Canadians talked a lot about internet policy and research in the discussions in the forum. Probably not surprising, given it's a little bit of a self-selected audience. But the comments there ranged from the need to conduct research into community-based internet service needs to calling for the development of a central authority to register complaints about and report malicious activity online. Some of the comments about the challenges to the success of the internet in Canada included the inherent problems for the internet service providers also acting as the content provider, and a perceived monopoly held by a few service providers. This is believed to result in costly and poor quality of service and act as a disincentive for service providers to make continued investment in technical infrastructure like data centers or more pipes. A number of users called for the government to keep the internet free and accessible, purporting that less regulation on the internet was better. Other identified issues included the need for Canada to prepare for the continued functioning of the internet in the event of a total breakdown of the internet and its availability, and to challenges in finding and recognizing computer programmers, as their training has not necessarily been achieved through traditional university or college challenges. So I think a spirited discussion came out of a statement from Vint Cerf, and I don't know if many of you remember, he made some comments about this in the fall, which garnered a fair amount of attention. So Vint Cerf is widely regarded as the godfather of the internet, one of the three people involved in actually creating the underlying protocols of the internet, and still continues to be very, very involved in the internet. In fact, he's Google's chief internet evangelist, that's his title. But he believes, and he spoke on this issue, that the internet access is not a human right. And which is interesting given that a number of nations have actually declared it already to be a human right. And even this past June, the United Nations released a report identifying the internet, or internet access, as a human right. So when the question is posed, should internet access be considered a human right, comments were equally divided on the pro and anti sides. What was really interesting to me were the reasons given on either side of the argument. Those in favor of considering access a right claimed that the internet has become so all-pervasive in our society, it's simply required for life now. The fact that the right to communicate is already recognized, and the fact that the internet has become for some necessary to communicate, necessitated for some its recognition as a human right. Those against cited the fact that it would be a bureaucratic nightmare. Lawsuits based on issues like throttling and bandwidth caps would probably become commonplace. The detractors also said that the internet is a tool or a means to an end and is therefore not a right. Furthermore, it's a technology and therefore at some point will likely be obsolete, and human rights typically don't go obsolete. And I think that, to some degree, is the side that Vint Cerf, who's been thinking about all things internet for a long time, that's the side he came down on. So it came as no surprise to me that Canadians wanted to talk about the internet access, speed, cost. We heard about it this morning. This was a topic common to all consultations as part of last year's CIF. And discussants raised issues of cost, slow speed, latency as major issues in Canada. And although mobile was identified as a solution to internet access, it was seen to be very expensive in Canada, so not the ideal solution at this time. And there's a clear belief that Canada suffers from an urban-rural divide with regards to access and speed. Urban centers are better served, faster, cheaper service than rural or remote environments. And though the internet can be a great facilitator of economic development, to some degree it's limited to certain areas of the country, most specifically urban centers. One commentator stated that the more Canadians have access to the internet, the more successful Canada will be as a whole, really underlying the need for broad-based access for all Canadians. And on a related note, there were a number of comments about the internet as an economic driver for Canada. The internet is a tool that enables any business located anywhere in the country to bring their business to an international market. It's also an enabler of innovation. One of the community-identified topics raised the potential the internet offers to Canada's entertainment industries as a medium for communication and marketing. And certainly in light of a couple of incidents of the American government seizing domains for websites suspected of engaging in activities contrary to their domestic copyright law, a topic was created by community members that called on a number of organizations, including CIRA, to ensure that Canadians retain the right of digital self-determination. This includes the development of technical solutions to ensure domain seizures do not happen here. And the authors also call on CIRA to invest in raising awareness about the threats facing internet and the domain name system, or the DNS. And again, I think we heard some very interesting words in and around that subject matter from Bertrand and Steve, among others, this morning. In recent months, copyright and the internet have been top-of-mind issues for many, and certainly within the internet community. It's only been a month or so since the widely reported protest against the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA as it's more commonly known, came and went. It came at probably no surprise to many then that Canadians wanted to talk about copyright legislation and its potential to censor and alter the behavior of the internet. Commenters found that it will be necessary to rethink the current economic model for compensating artists. The current model doesn't seem to work well in the current digital world. And the final topic Canadians discussed in the forum was security. Comments around security really took the angle of educating the average internet user about threats online, about how to stay safe. And one commenter stated that they did not believe that the online threats seemed concrete enough to the average user. It was digital and virtual out there somewhere, but not concrete to me. And because online threats seem detached and therefore not really considered with the weight that they really should be. That said, there were other issues brought up. Another comment stated that we need to teach common sense to the average user, but of course, common sense is not always so common. And that we need to teach people not to be fearful online, to be educated and digitally literate, but not to be fearful. All forum commenters on this topic agreed crime on the internet needs to be stopped. And some felt that Canada should be taking a leadership role in eradicating online crime. Again, users underlined the importance of security as it's the key to trust online. And as we know, trust is critical to the effective and efficient functioning of all internet transactions, be they commercial or communication-based. So that's what we heard from Canadians over the past 3 months. And in a few minutes, we're going to turn the mics over to all of you for all of your thoughts. But first, I'd like to talk about some of the higher level observations we made around these findings. First and foremost, the survey results showed us that those of us on the inside of Internet governance, or in the Internet governance ecosystem, we really need to do a better job of communicating and engaging in dialogue around these issues and why they're so important to all of us. And I'm going to be looking to you in our upcoming discussions for some ideas on how do we do that? How do we do a better job of creating the space for the conversation? So the good news was that through the CIF process, we found that there is an engaged and informed group of Canadians with an interest in Internet governance. And this group is keenly interested in discussing a number of the issues. But we found that security, innovation, digital literacy, and the free and open Internet and access are without a doubt the top of mind topics. We also learned that education will be key to moving forward on a number of the identified issues, including security and digital literacy. And finally, it's the interrelated nature of the topics that became very apparent during the discussions. And while digital literacy and security were identified as separate topics, it was really felt that digital literacy skills are absolutely key in addressing many of the security concerns, and that access to broadband was seen as critical to the economic success of all regions of Canada. So that's the findings so far of the 2012 Canadian Internet Forum, and I certainly look forward to hearing all of your thoughts and opinions about what you've heard and anything else, as they will be integral to the white paper that we're going to develop and subsequently present to the next global Internet Governance Forum this fall. So thank you very much. Again, appreciate the participation and look forward to hearing your views on how we go forward here.